could please bow their heads for a moment of reflection. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda. There's nothing that we have to add. Is there anything that anyone else would like to add to the agenda this evening? Seeing no one, we'll need a motion to accept the agenda as presented. Moved by Amanda, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have 17 items on our consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, back up. If you have pecuniary interest, you can declare it now or as the meeting goes along. Now we'll move to consent agenda and agenda items. We have 17 items. Is there anything anyone wishes to have pulled or ask questions about? Andrew?
Just a quick update on maybe 5.1.12 about the opening allocations. Just kind of, where does that put us? Is that expected? Is that better? Is that worse? I wonder if someone could just give a heads up on what we're looking at. Thank you.
Okay, Rhonda Fisher, could you please answer that?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. So we got our oomph announcement this year, and it was good. So we've had some cuts over the past, well, quite a few years now, and we've been telling council that it's going to end once we get to this point, and it has. We got about, I don't have the exact numbers, like 30 some odd $1,000 that we have more than last year. So it's better than a $600,000 reduction. So I would say that's good news.
Thank you. That is great news.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. Is there any other questions on any of those 17 items? Seeing none, we need a motion to accept them. Moved by Jerry, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have no delegations tonight. We do have public meetings. We have 2 public meetings. So the first public meeting is a zoning bylaw amendment. I declare this virtual public meeting to be open. This virtual public meeting is being held to consider a proposed zoning bylaw amendment affecting property currently owned by 2516459 Ontario Limited, care of Daniel and Allison Van Stratton, care of Trevor McNeil, MTE OLS Limited, part of lots 7 and 8, concession 5, Ellis Ward, 4282, line 39. This virtual meeting is an opportunity for the township to advise the public of the purpose and intent of the amendment and receive their input prior to considering adoption of an implementing bylaw. If the bylaw is adopted, the zoning amendment, a notice of passing will be forwarded by prepaid first-class mail to various agencies of interest and others who have requested notice. An appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal objecting to the adoption of the bylaw may be filed with the clerk not later than the date stated on the notice. Any person attending this meeting who wishes to receive written notice of a bylaw passed to implement the amendment is asked to give their name and mailing address to the clerk following this meeting. No written notice except as previously noted will be given unless requested by email following the meeting. Due to COVID-19, public meeting procedures have been adjusted to adhere to provincial guidelines for holding electronic meetings. Any person who wished to be heard regarding this matter was asked to register prior to this meeting by the deadline of Monday, November 16, 2020 at 12 noon with the municipal clerk. I will now call on Perth County Planner Evan to present the planning report and recommendations. Evan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. What I'm going to do is just share my screen. I prepared a presentation to discuss the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Okay, assuming everybody can see my screen here. So what I'm actually going to do today is there's been a recent staff change at the Township of Perth East, as you might be aware, and county staff have retained MHBC planning. We have been providing consulting services for their development applications, and that position has since passed on to or transferred over to Perth East now as well. We have not got an opportunity to do a fulsome evaluation of the policy criteria. So what this presentation is going to be a presentation for information to council, and then we will follow up at a subsequent meeting for a report with a recommendation. And in addition, this zoning bylaw amendment can't necessarily be passed now anyways, as there are two other sort of other pieces that need to be approved prior, and I'll explain that in the amendment here. So just going through the presentation, the subject property is 4282 line 39 in Perth East. You can see it here. It's just northwest of Road 122. And this aerial photo here provides just an illustrated overview of what is currently on the property. As you can see, it's currently used for cash cropping. There's a municipal drain that runs along the rear, and then there's a farm dwelling down in the corner. So a little bit of the history on this property. What has triggered this zoning amendment was that the owner and applicant originally applied for a county consent application B5119. It was proposed to sever a surplus farm dwelling lot from a consolidated farming operation. And this is the severed sketch that was provided here. The lot to be severed is this. The previous county planner actually brought a recommendation to the county for approval of this consent. But there were several other outstanding matters that needed to be dealt with prior to land division committee at the county level approving it finally. So what happened was the severance application triggered a site-specific county official plan amendment, which is known as OPA 194. This is a report that will actually be being presented tonight as well, along with another public meeting further in the agenda. So the purpose of the OPA 194 was to allow for the proposed severance within the mineral aggregate resources designation in the county official plan. So you can see here, this map, the subject property has two different land use designations on it. One is agriculture, and the other is primary or secondary aggregate resource, which is a mineral aggregate resources designation. So essentially, in a mineral aggregate resource designation, you can do a severance, but you can't, as of right, do a severance using the surplus farm dwelling severance policies. So the OPA 194 is to allow that farmer who has a consolidated farm operation here sever this farm property through the surplus farm dwelling severance policies. So first step is OPA 194. In order to have the OPA 194, an aggregate impact assessment was prepared by the applicant, which I will get into when we do the report and the presentation for that application. If the OPA is approved, the surplus farm dwelling severance could then be approved by the county subject to conditions, i.e. provisional approval. One of those conditions on the severance, which would follow the official plan amendment, is that the owner and applicant rezone both the retained and the severed parcels to be regulated as per the requirements of the county official plan. So that's what this application is the applicant's, he's being efficient in that he's applying early to have all the applications sort of circulated concurrently. So the proposal is that they rezone the retained farm lot to prohibit any new permanent residential dwellings, which is this in purple. Zone the proposed farm lot to recognize any zoning deficiencies that may occur as a result of the severance. And then rezone the proposed severed lot to permit only a dwelling and accessory uses, buildings and structures, a home occupation, and a bed and breakfast establishment as permitted uses, and as well zone the severed lot to recognize any deficiencies. So the severed lot, retained lot. The next steps, I gave a bit of history, but OPA 194 must first be approved by council. The next county council meeting is December 3rd. Then the consent application B5119 can be brought back to the Perth County Land Division Committee for provisional approval. And that LDC meeting, the next one is December 21st, 2020. And then a notice of decision on the consent application can be issued. The public will have an opportunity to appeal that decision should they wish. And if they meet certain criteria, if there are no appeals, the applicant will have 1 year to fulfill any conditions of consent. And within that year is this proposed zoning bylaw amendment. So that this is the application that we're presenting here. That can be brought forward to Township Council for a decision. So we're anticipating that we'll bring the report back to you in the early new year. The applicant will then satisfy all conditions of consent within 1 year, and they'll eventually get the certificate for that new lot, meaning it'll be created. Are there any questions?
Okay, thanks, Evan. No one registered to make a presentation to speak in opposition of the application. Is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in support of the application other than the applicant or the applicant's agent, and no one registered for this? Does the applicant agent or the applicant have any comments or questions? And I believe Trevor Neal is with us tonight.
Yes, Sam, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Yeah, welcome. Hello, council and everyone. Just here to basically answer any questions of the of council regarding this application. It's a straightforward surplus farmhouse severance other than the aggregate issue, which is what we're doing the official plan amendment for. As I missed part of Evan's presentation because the Wi-Fi was pausing his speech, so I missed part of that. But we did do a geotechnical study out there and did some soil sampling to prove that what's left on that property would not make a gravel pit viable for the property, and that the house is not sitting on the little bit of gravel deposit that is there. It's more to the west side of the property. So that was part of the OPA process that we had done to verify that so we could move ahead. And then I just had a question of Evan. Because we're going through the OPA as well, is that why it has to go to Land Division Committee, or was there the possibility of the planner just getting the authority to approve it if there's no concerns about the property severance?
Through you, your worship. I can give you some clarity on that process, Trevor. So the OPA goes first and then is approved through County Council. The application for the surplus farm dwelling severance would be second, and this council has already recommended approval back in 2019, I believe. The reason it would go to Land Division Committee at this point, as opposed to through Sally's delegated authority, is because of all of these subsequent applications and the timeline that's been involved. It's not that it's contested, but that being said, we have received several comments from the public on OPA 194. Again, I'll get into that in more detail when we get to that section of the agenda. But it's not to add undue time. It's just to hear everything as it's fresh now, as opposed to several months ago. But we do not have to bring it back to Township Council unless, of course, that's something they wish to hear again. But I believe they've already made a resolution on that consent.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the clarification. So yeah, if there's any questions of council, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thanks, Trevor. Are there any questions from members of council? Seeing no questions, bylaw number 217/2019 to implement the approval of the zoning application will be considered at a later date. Okay, now we will move to our second public meeting. This virtual public meeting is being held to consider a zoning bylaw amendment affecting property currently owned by Laura Kipfer, Kara Dwayne Martin, Apex Building and Contracting Incorporated, part of Lot 16, Concession 7 and RP 44R-5418, Part 1, Mornington Ward, 7003 Raymond Drive, Millbank. I'm just going to skip right down till we get to the part for Evan. So Evan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess through you, your worship. This is another example where we're doing a transition file here. So Perth East received this application for a zoning bylaw amendment, which affects the property municipally addressed as 7003 Raymond Drive. I'm going to share my screen one more time. So this is zoning bylaw amendment Z16 2002 PE. And the subject property, as I said, is 7003 Raymond Drive. It's in the village of Millbank. You can see here in the aerial photo, it's sort of in the north corner. And Raymond Drive comes off of Perth line 72 and it terminates here in this sort of triangular odd shaped lot. There is currently a barn and a crop that's being, cash crop being used on this property. The proposal here is that the owner applicant wishes to construct a new hardware store and accessory warehouse on the newly severed lot. And the severance is a result of the recently approved county consent application B18 and B19-20. So the section you see here at the hardware store is actually intended to be established on the lot that was created through application B19, which is this piece. This is a draft site plan that the applicant has submitted as sort of a visual for the zoning amendment. However, in order to ensure that the Millbank hardware store can be developed here, it needs the correct zoning permissions before this can happen. So it needs to be rezoned. Before we get into the proposed zoning amendment, I'll give you some history on this one. So the property owner and applicant had applied for consents, again, B18-20 and B19-20. So B18-20 was to convey a 0.98 hectare portion of the land from the subject property to the owner of 4072 Perth line 72. So this section here would be conveyed to the gentleman that owns this property, which is a farm equipment supply store. B19-20, actually both of these applications were heard at the last council meeting, so you may recall if these sound a little bit like I'm droning on. But B19-20 was to sever the other portion of the property, so this portion, into one new and one retained lot. This would be the severed lot, this would be the retained lot. While retaining, so the severed portion is 1.55 hectares, this one, and then the retained portion was 5.06 hectares, this piece. Part of this application also required the conveyance of a small 0.32 hectare portion of the subject lands to the township, which is this piece here, to facilitate the extension and improvements to Raymond Drive, which would effectively bring the road into the retained lot, provide frontage for the retained lot, and then also provide frontage for this severed lot here. Both of these applications have been approved, and part of the conditions of the consent are that the owner rezone the subject properties to accommodate the new proposed use, which in this case is a hardware store. So this is just a visual depiction that you've seen previous that shows the consent applications that were previously approved. So this was B18-20. This is the severances that were resulting from B19-20. Severed in purple, retained in white, conveyed to the township here in green. So the proposed zoning, the applicant is asking to rezone the subject property from future development FD to highway commercial C3 to permit the proposed commercial use, which in this case, the defined use in the zoning bylaw is a building supply, outlet, and related hardware sales. And they also want to zone to recognize any zoning deficiencies that may occur as a result of the severance. And in this case, the example of that would be the smaller lot frontage at this bulb. So I've shown the existing zoning of the area just for your visual cue here. You can see what the proposed zoning is as part of this. So everything in this sort of taupe color is future development zone, which is what the subject property is. And they're proposing to rezone it to highway commercial or C3, which is the pink. As you can see, there are other highway commercial uses in the area. And the zoning would be a fitting use for this property, and this was discussed in the consent. So there's a couple of things other than this, the fact that this presentation is simply for information and that our recommendation will come at a later date. There's a couple of things to work out between the applicant once we've had a better chance to review the draft site plan. But some things will be controlled through the zoning amendment phase, the use and the zone designation in particular. But the position of this conveyance is a hot topic that we need to sort out prior to any recommendation coming forward. So this is the Severn sketch here in red, and I've overlaid the site plan. As you can see, there's a section of the cul-de-sac that's being proposed here with parking lot. As you can notice here in the blue, essentially what this current site plan does is landlocks this severed parcel, which we can't have moving forward. So we'll need to go back to the applicant and discuss a reconfiguration of this bulb so that it matches up with what's approved through the consent. Again, that'll be dealt with prior to you receiving a report with a recommendation at a later date. The next steps here for the applicant. So after this public meeting, staff will bring a report back to this council for a recommendation. That recommendation will include any negotiation or discussions with the applicant. Once council has passed this bylaw, a notice of passing will be provided within 15 days of that decision. And then within 20 days of the notice of passing, again, any person or public body may appeal to the LPAT by filing a notice of appeal with the municipal clerk, so long as they meet certain criteria. If there are no appeals, a notice of decision will be issued. And then once the zoning bylaw amendment is approved, in order to construct any new commercial use on this property, the retained portion, the severed portion, or on the portion to be conveyed to the other landowner, they will need to apply for site plan control to address specific details. Like we talked about previous, the parking lot orientation, building setbacks, location, on-site parking, loading and unloading areas and access, lot coverage, that kind of thing. After they get site plan approval, they'll enter into a site plan agreement with the township, and then they'll go for building permits then. So there's a few things to do prior to having a new hardware store in Millbank, but this zoning amendment is step 2 in a multi-step process. Are there any questions?
Okay, thanks, Evan. No one registered to make a presentation or speak in opposition of the application. No one registered to make a presentation or speak in support of the application other than the applicant or the applicant's agent. So we have Mr. Martin and Mr. Gerber with us tonight. Do gentlemen wish to make a presentation?
This is Dwayne Martin. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I'm here as the agent for Millbank Hardware. Millbank Hardware, as Evan went through in his presentation, is proposing to move their hardware store from downtown over to this lot over here. I work for Apex Building and Contracting. We've been hired as the general contractor and the construction manager for the project. I didn't have a specific presentation, I guess, to present. Here to answer any questions if anybody has questions. A few comments to make, I guess. Part of it is because of the transition that's happening here. Evan may not be up to speed on a few of the most recent developments, but there has been a site plan approval process that has already been started for this site, and a more current site plan submitted and comments already received from the township in relation to this site. So sort of the issues with the parking and some of those things, those were already dealt with in a previous submission to the township. They just obviously didn't get to Evan. Which, if anyone here wants to see that site plan and I'm allowed to share my screen, then I can share that as well if that's of interest to anyone. But in general, yeah, Evan went over it well. We were just proposing to transfer rezone from future development to highway commercial to allow the use of a hardware store on that 12-acre parcels.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Martin. Mr. Gerber, do you have any comments?
I don't think I have anything to add. I think Evan went through it well. Here to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of council? No questions. Okay, So bylaw 216-2020 to implement the approval of the zoning application will be considered at a later date. The virtual public meeting is now concluded and we will continue with regular meeting of council. Okay, so the next item on regular meeting is planning and developments. We have an application to sever number B40-20 by Anthony Gordon Holdings Incorporated, care of Tyler Van Dyke. And we have Louisa with us tonight to make her presentation. Louisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council. Yes, I'm here to present the staff report for the application, B4020, consent to sever on behalf of Anthony Gordon Holdings. So the owner of the subject property, Anthony Gordon Holdings, has applied for this consent application concerning the property addressed as 6973 and 6974 Church Street in Millbank. The purpose of this consent application is to convey a portion of this property as a lot addition to the property addressed as 4082 Princess Street in Millbank. The portion of this subject property on Church Street includes all the land from that parcel that is located to the west of the Nith River. Thus, the Nith River forms essentially a logical boundary between the lands that would be retained and the lands that are to be conveyed to the property on Princess Street. No new development is proposed as part of this application. And in essence, the purpose of this lot addition or conveyance is to undertake a technical consent to improve the land rights for that portion of land that is to be conveyed, as they are currently essentially landlocked, and to provide improved access for maintenance purposes or otherwise. The proposed area that is to be severed is approximately 1.84 hectares or 4.5 acres. And as mentioned, is this land that is located to the west of the Nith River. As a result of this lot addition, the proposed lot that would be enlarged, the 4082 Princess Street property, would maintain the same frontage, but would have a total lot area of approximately 1.9 hectares or 4.7 acres. As a result of this conveyance, the retained lot on Church Street would similarly retain the same lot frontage and would have a lot area of approximately 24,700 square meters or 6.1 acres. This property that is to be retained currently contains the Millbank cheese and butter shop, as well as a one-story residential dwelling. The property that is to be retained, the Church Street property, is currently designated village, similar to the other property that is to be enlarged. And largely the portion that is to be conveyed is also designated with a floodplain overlay due to the presence of the Nith River. The property to be retained is zoned industrial with a floodplain overlay as well. And the property to be enlarged is currently zoned Hamlet Village residential. So I think that summarizes, in essence, this application. Should council have any questions, I am available to take any questions and provide answers.
Okay, thanks, Louisa. Does anyone have any questions? Cheryl?
Yeah, so again, it's accessibility issues is the sole purpose here, is what I'm grabbing, correct? They are pretty limited. I mean, in the floodplain for future development, like, what could go down there? Thanks.
Sorry, through your worship, Councillor Hurley, do you mind repeating that, the question?
No, it's accessibility to the back, right? Right now, how do they service it right now then?
Correct, yeah, through your worship, yeah. At this point, there is no formal access, shall we say, to that piece of land. And if you have the figure that is contained in the report in front of you, it's pretty clear to see. There is a small point where there is an access on Main Street near the Nith River and the bridge, but that area is currently fenced off. So there's no legal access, shall we say. And that's the intent behind this application, is to provide it, you know, access and frontage and a legal avenue to, you know, maintain that property for the landowner.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we do have a resolution. I'm going to read part of it. I'm going to condense part of it, but for anyone who's watching, you can see the full resolution on our website, where you'll be able to see everything. So please bear with me. It is a little long. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm the good part of it. So Council of the Township of Perth East received a report entitled Application for Consent to Sever number B40/20 by Anthony Gordon Holdings Incorporated, care of Tyler Van Dyke, affecting lands described as lots 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, Plan 260, Part Lot 16, Concession 6, Mornington, Parts 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, Plan 44R-3145, Part Church Street, Plan 260, closed by bylaw R247574, Part 1, Plan 44R-1355, Lot 17 and 18, Plan 260, Parts Lot 11 and 12, Plan 260, Parts 1 and 2, Plan 44R-566, and Part Lot 44, Plan 260. Part Lot 45, S/S Waterloo Street, PI 260, Part Lot 16, Concession 6, Mornington Ward, Part Lot 16, Plan 260, as in R357650, T/WR 149597, and R217180, S/TR 283914, save and accept Parts 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 45, 44R-3489, and Parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 44R-4401, Township of Perth East, 6973-6974, Church Street, and lots 12 and 13, Plan 261, Part Lots 10 and 11, Part Plan 261, Part 1, 3, and 4, 44R-341, Township of Perth East, 4082 Princess Street, dated November 17, 2020, prepared by HBC Planning Consultant Planner on behalf of the County of Perth for information. And that same description that I just read, that recommends the County Perth Land Division approve the application for consent to sever with these conditions: that all the financials have been met, the taxes have been paid in full, the confirmation received, the certificate of official will be scanned and attached to the electronic registration of the transfer. The county be provided with a description that is consistent with the application and equal to that required for registration of the deed/transfer or other conveyances of interest. The registered plan required an electronic filing containing the digital plotting of the description under the Registry Act or Land Titles Act, including the textual description of file format, map standards, use, scale, and location information such as lot concession and municipality and geo-referenced AutoCAD. That the confirmation be received by the Land Division Committee that the notice sign and frame were posted and that they have been returned. That the Township of Perth East, that the portion of the drains have been updated and reviewed. That a reference plan be prepared by a licensed Ontario land surveyor. The owner of 6973/6974 Church Street conveys the 18,400 meter portion of the property to the owner of 4082 Princess Street by way of a deed or transfer to the satisfaction of the County of Perth, and an undertaking from a solicitor stating that the severed parcel to be added to 4082 Princess will be sold to a buyer to the satisfaction of the County of Perth. Wow. Moved by Jeremy, second by Amanda. Is there any more questions? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Louisa.
Thank you.
Our next item is the amendment to the county official plan by 2516-459 Ontario Limited, and I'll turn it over to Evan.
Thank you once again, through you, your worship. We are back on 4282 line 39 in Perth East. So this is the report to you for county official plan amendment 194, which affects the property at 4282 line 39 Perth East. So the applicant has applied for a county official plan amendment in order to permit a surplus farm dwelling severance within the portion of the property that is designated mineral aggregate resources, primary or secondary aggregate resources, subject to the criteria of the surplus farm dwelling severance policies in the county OP, which is 5631. As you recall from the public meeting on the zoning amendment, the portion of the property which would contain the surplus farm dwelling is located within the aggregate designation. So the purpose of the amendment is to apply a site-specific policy to section 10.5.14 of the county official plan, which are the site-specific policy section. And it would create essentially a new schedule, which would be A194 to the Perth County official plan. And notwithstanding the policies of section 10.5.10, 10.6.8, and 10.7.4 of the county official plan, to the contrary, the severance of a resident's surplus to an existing farming operation may be permitted, provided that the consent application conform to the surplus farm dwelling severance policies of section 5631 of the county official plan. Furthermore, that the policies of section 10.5.10 and 10.7.4, a single detached dwelling and accessory uses would be permitted on land severed as part of the surplus farm dwelling severance. So it sounds complicated, but what's happening here is farming uses are permitted in the aggregate designation in the Perth County official plan. Half the property is already designated aggregate, and the other, 2/3 of the property are designated aggregate, and the other 1/3 is agriculture. So essentially what's happening is there's an existing farm operation with an existing farmhouse. That farmer who owns and operates the farm there has another farm operation in Perth County and does not need the home on this property anymore and is deemed surplus to their needs as part of a consolidated operation and wants to undertake a standard surplus farm dwelling severance. However, the aggregate designation on the property doesn't have provision for that type of severance, so they have applied to allow for a similar a similar type of severance through a site-specific. So there's a couple of important pieces that form the crux of this application. One is the county does not have an abundance of aggregate resources. They are very limited in quantity and quality, and they're in certain key areas in the county. So the applicant is not proposing any new development as part of this. They are proposing a surplus farm dwelling severance and a site-specific policy. They are not proposing a new quarry or a pit, but what we needed to know is whether or not this amendment to allow for a new lot line would preclude or hinder the establishment of any new aggregate operation on the subject property or the expansion of a neighboring aggregate operation. So there is actually an existing aggregate operation that's across the street at 4343 line 39, which is license number 4479, also known as the Regan Pit. It is owned by Sherco Holdings Incorporated and operated by McCann Construction. They have a license for a Class A pit, which extracts aggregate resources below the water table. The operation has a licensed area of over 100 hectares. So it's quite a large operation across the street. It's authorized to extract up to 500,000 tons of unconsolidated sand and gravel resources, meaning it's only a pit. And the 2013 aggregate resources inventory for the county describes this pit as a dredging operation with a hard to determine depth or percent of gravel. So I say this because it's necessary to understand that there is an existing operation across the street, meaning there are aggregates in the area. There are aggregates in the area that are on a pit that is a rather large license boundary. So given the size, they were able to validate or justify the feasibility of an operation across the street. So that being said, the subject property is a much smaller property. And in order to understand whether or not this application would preclude or hinder the establishment of a future aggregate operation, we needed to have that potential resource assessed. So the applicant retained MTE consultants to undertake an aggregate resources impact assessment. They've labeled it as a geotechnical investigation. So what they did was review well records in the county for the neighboring areas. And they did test pitting to depths of between 2.3 and 2.6 meters below the ground surface. Page 132 of the agenda describes the conclusions of this aggregate impact assessment. Essentially, the quality of the layers is unknown. However, based on the relative thinness and significant depths of these layers, the material would not be considered economically feasible for aggregate extraction on the property. Based on the results of the investigation, it's anticipated that extractable aggregate deposits are located at a distance greater than 30 meters from the severed lot. And as such, the conclusion is that it is not anticipated that the lot severance will impact future aggregate resource potential. It does appear that the aggregate potential of the subject property is minimal, and that the available materials and depths of those materials may be economically unfeasible for aggregate extraction. So the other piece to note was that the bedrock layer, which would be the sort of valuable limestone resource, is located at depths between 39.3 meters to 53.3 meters below grade, meaning to get to that resource would require significant sidewalls on a property which is relatively small in size. So as I mentioned earlier, the pit across the street, which has determined the feasibility for an operation for a pit, which is the anything below the soil level down to bedrock, has an area of over 100 hectares, while the subject property is less than half that size. And a new operation would be difficult, to say the least, to establish. That being said, the proposed severance, it only creates a lot boundary around the house. So that's essentially the only development being proposed as a result of that severance. And while there would be setbacks associated with establishing a new aggregate operation on the retained parcel from the severed house, I don't think that any aggregate producer would endeavor to achieve an aggregate operation on only the retained lot. And what that means is they are not without right to still, they are not without the ability to purchase both the retained and the severed lot in the future, should they determine that they wish to establish an aggregate operation at that time. And it would be difficult, to say the least, to establish a lot or an aggregate operation on only the retained lot. So the severance, while it does create a new lot line, it doesn't preclude or hinder the establishment of a future aggregate operation. And that being said, there is no aggregate operation proposed as a result of this, but it needed to be assessed from a county policy standpoint, given that there's very limited aggregate resources in the county. So the recommendation to Township Council is that you receive the report for information, and that you recommend to County Council that the official plan amendment 194 be approved to allow for a future consent, and then which would be followed by that zoning amendment you heard earlier.
Sorry, I was muted. Thanks, Evan. Is there any questions for Evan? Daryl?
No, thanks there. I'm no extreme expert in aggregate, but yeah, you explained that very well. I am very familiar with aggregate, and the depths and the issues that are there. Yeah, this is a tough one to be justifying to go after any kind of aggregate or limestone, that's for sure. And really well explained. I applaud you on that. Thank you. So, no, thank you.
Okay, anyone else have questions? Evan?
I should note that I did mention to a member of the public that I would read one of his comments to council just to have it on the record. So we did receive calls from at least 2 neighbors. None of them were opposed to the application. More of them simply wanted to find out what the application entailed. Most of them did not want to see a pit or quarry or new aggregate operation on the site, which further justifies the future severance should that go through. But a Mr. Vince Ryder provided comment to me, and I mentioned to him that I would read it if I can just take a minute to state those comments. Essentially, what he's asking for is so he lives on lot 8, which is on the right side of the subject property. And his only concern is that he doesn't wish to see the subject property turned into an active gravel pit. If it were to be a gravel pit, that they would have to dig down so far that they would hit the water table. So again, that would be an operation below the water table. Any fluctuation in the water table because of this activity would affect his water table and ultimately his water level in the water well. And his other concern would be with respect to noise from truck traffic or equipment operating on site. So for those reasons, he did not want to see it turned into a gravel pit. And again, that is not the purpose of the application. The purpose of the application is simply to allow a site-specific provision to allow for a surplus farm dwelling severance. The subject property will essentially remain status quo.
Okay, thanks, Evan. So are there any other questions from council members? Seeing none, we do have a resolution that the Council of the Township of Perth East received the report entitled Application for County Official Plan Amendment number 194 by 2516-459 Ontario Limited, affecting lands described as part of lots 7 and 8, concession 5, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East, 4282 line 39 Perth East, dated November 17, 2020, prepared by the consulting planner on behalf of the County of Perth for information, and that the Council of the Township of Perth East recommend to County Council to approve the application for an official plan amendment number 194 by 2516-459 Ontario Limited, affecting lands described as part of lots 7 and 8, concession 5, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East, 4282 line 39 Perth East. We have a mover, moved by Andrew, second by Daryl. Is there any more questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're going to move on to a public meeting. This is a Perth County Council public meeting, so only Daryl and Hugh are allowed to ask questions. First of all, we have a motion that the Perth East Council adjourn to the Perth County public meeting. This can be moved by Jeremy, second by Daryl. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so I declare this public meeting to be open. This public meeting with members of Perth County Council is being held to consider a proposed amendment to the County of Perth official plan affecting property currently owned by 2516459 Ontario Limited, legal address of parts of lot 7 and 8, concession 5, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East, 4282 line 39 Perth East. This meeting is an opportunity for the County of Perth to advise the public of the purpose and intent of the amendment and receive their input prior to considering the amendment to the county official plan and the adoption of the implementing bylaw for the amendment. If an amendment is adopted to implement the official plan amendment, notice of the adoption will be forwarded by prepaid first-class mail or email to various agencies of interest and others who have requested notice. An appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board objecting to the adoption of the amendment may be filed with the clerk not later than the date stated on the notice. And I believe that's called ALPAT now, not Ontario Municipal Board. Any person present who wishes to receive written notice of the amendment to the County of Perth official plan is asked to give their name and mailing address to the clerk at this time. No written notice except as previously noted will be given unless requested at this time. All persons attending this meeting will be given an opportunity to be heard or make a presentation. I will now call on the County of Perth Planner, Evan, to present the planning report and recommendations. Evan?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Your Worship, again, here we are back on 4282, line 39. I did notice that Mr. McNeil from MTE is still on the meeting. So if anybody has any objection to it, I don't think I will read through the report again. This is the same one we just heard for this official plan amendment 194, the aggregate designated property, looking for a site-specific amendment to host a surplus farm dwelling severance. The only difference in this recommendation is that we will be asking that a zoning or a bylaw be approved to pull the official plan amendment into the county official plan.
Okay, thanks, Evan. No one registered to make a presentation or speak in opposition of the application. No one registered to make a presentation to speak in support of the application other than the applicant or the applicant's agent. Does the applicant or the applicant's agent have any comments or questions? Trevor?
Thank you, Mayor Akins. I guess the only thing I would add is when we were talking about the gravel deposit, on all the maps, the very north edge of the deposit is what's on our property. So there is no, according to all the maps and that, there's no further areas to the north of our property. We're kind of right on the fringe. So I guess that's why we didn't find much when we did the geotechnical study. Other than that, unless there's any questions of council.
Okay, are there any questions from members of Perth County Council? Hugh or Darrell? No, okay. There's no. County Council will decide on December 3rd on the recommendation. So the Perth County public meeting is now concluded, and as per the previous resolution, the Township of Perth East Council meeting will now recommence. So first, before we do that, Ashley says we need a motion that says the Perth County Council public meeting adjourned. So Darrell and Hugh, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the CAO report. And we have the Perth County Connect Community Transit Bus Stop Agreement. So I'll turn it over to Teresa.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. So as this report is a follow-up to the report considered by council regarding council considered the bus stop in Milverton at the administrative office. So two other stops for the community transportation project have been identified in Perth East, and working with Maggie Martin, who is on the line, the transit project coordinator. These two stops are in Gads Hill and Newton, and those ones are being brought forward to council because they are on township property. So I'm going to turn this over to Maggie and council if there are any questions regarding this report and actually the community transportation project. Thank you.
Thank you. So through your worship, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to share that we have successfully soft launched the PC Connect as of yesterday. So as you know, many of you may know that the PC Connect is an all-new community bus system that is servicing the county and providing connectivity to Stratford, St. Mary's, London, and the Kitchener-Waterloo areas. So we had positioned the launch yesterday as a soft launch in order to gather operational data and feedback that allow us to enhance the service and include additional bus stops prior to our full service launch in early 2021. So on Route A, both Gads Hill and Newton are included on the routes. However, we currently don't have an identified bus stop in these locations. So our initial goal was to acquire partnerships with small businesses throughout those communities in order to create a safe and accessible location on those private properties. However, unfortunately, due to the insurance requirements that were initially drawn up by our legal and insurance representatives, entering into a bus stop agreement with the county was not feasible for many of these small businesses. So our long-term strategy to get bus stop locations in both Gads Hill and Newton is to revisit our agreement in order to make it more feasible for small business owners and to secure private locations for permanent bus stops. However, in the meantime, we believe it'll be very beneficial for residents throughout the communities identified to have a designated bus stop location at this time. So we have identified the safest, what we believe to be the safest and most convenient locations in both Gads Hill and Brunner, and have appended them to the report for your reference. So the concern for these temporary bus stop locations is that they are not currently fully accessible. So we are recommending that the county installs asphalt pads as temporary measures to ensure accessibility. So these pads would be designed so that the municipal plows could clear them just on their regular clearing routes and schedules. Although pads are required to ensure full accessibility and also create a safe place for our riders to wait for the bus service, we are happy to proceed with only installing temporary bus stop signs at this time until the demand is proven and more feedback is gathered regarding exact locations. I did want to note that we actually have had several bookings for the Newton area, which is great news. So we are confident that an identified stop in the area is required immediately. So that is my brief update for you all tonight. Thank you so much for your time and for your continued support on the PC Connect service. We are ecstatic to have it finally on the road, and we're seeing lots of great take up already just in their first 2 days of operation. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to address them at this time.
Okay, thanks, Maggie and Teresa. Is there any questions? Jeremy?
Hey, thanks for coming out tonight. So we have the Newton stop on Holmes Drive on the side. I'll call it the side street of Holmes Drive. Was the recreation area considered for that stop? Like, there is a nice flat area there that the county wouldn't have to put in a concrete pad or anything like that. That's township property. Yes, that's township property, I believe. So I'm just curious if we considered that location, and if we can, if not, it's a bigger spot. Like, if you're going to get 7, 8, 10 people cramming over there onto Holmes Drive, it seems like quite a small location to do that. It would just be a little more off the beaten path to go to the recreation area, but it seems like the spot would be more ready.
So through your worship, I just want to clarify, is there a recreational park that you're referring to, like the community, like a park? Sorry, can you just clarify where exactly that is? I know we did look at one, but just
it's kind of on the north side of town.
Okay, yeah, I think it's if it's the right one I'm thinking of, we did consider it. However, it was a gravel kind of U-shaped entrance. Would that be correct? Yeah, so we weren't able to leverage that due to gravel. So our buses aren't able to travel on those roads. But that was actually one of our initial stops that we were looking at, but unfortunately we weren't able to make that work.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing no questions, we do have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the Perth County Connect Community Transit Bus Stop Agreement Report prepared by the CAO dated November 17, 2020 for information, and that Council approve giving 3 readings to bylaws 73-2020 and 74-2020 being bylaws to enter into a bus stop access agreements with the County of Perth. Moved by Andrew, second by Amanda. Is there any more comments or questions? Andrew?
In a change from last week, I'll be pleased to vote for this. We've received confirmation from county staff that Shakespeare Village will be included in Route 2 stop early January of 2021. So that's good news for all. Thanks very much.
Okay, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm a little fuzzy as to why we can't. I understand not wanting to go on the gravel over there. I don't like the idea, particularly about being in that residential area as a pickup spot. So I'm going to vote against it.
Okay, anyone else have any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Thanks, Maggie, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Teresa, you have anything else this time?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to the clerk. We have Drain, and I'll turn it over to Ashley.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This petition here is for a new drain off of the Mile Schaefer drain. So earlier this year, council received a section 74 request to enlarge the Mile Schaefer drain. And while they're doing that project, they would like to extend a portion of this. And that's all I have. If there's any questions.
Okay, is there any questions for Ashley? Seeing no questions, we do have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the petition for drainage works, Section 4 of the Drainage Act by property owner William Steinacker lot 37, Concession 8, Southeast Hope Ward, Township of Perth East for information. And that the Council of the Township of Perth East appoint Dietrich Engineering Limited to prepare a report under Section 4 of the Drainage Act, and that staff proceed to provide notice of the proposed drainage works to the Secretary Treasurer of the Conservation Authority that has jurisdiction over the lands in the affected area. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Anything else? Oh, okay. We'll move to finance, and we have our annual investment report. And we'll turn it over to Rhonda.
Hi, this is our annual investment report, and that shows our average return is 1.92%, which is down from 2.29% last year. There's a schedule of investments included with the report, and just to note that the prime rate has reduced since last year, and then partly due to COVID. If there's any questions, I can answer them for you.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Rhonda? No, it's a night of no questions. Okay, so we have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receives a report prepared by the Treasurer dated November 17, 2020, entitled Annual Investment Report for Information. Moved by Jerry, second by Jeremy. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Anything else, Rhonda?
No, thank you.
No, okay, thank you. Now we're going to move to Public Works and Parks and Maintenance Mutual Aid Agreement. Wes?
This report went to County Council, and now it's back to the lower tiers. So looking for approval.
Okay, anyone have any questions for Wes? No questions. The Council of Township of Perth East received the Winter Maintenance Mutual Aid Agreement report prepared by the Manager of Public Works and Parks dated November 17, 2020 for information, and that the Council of the Township of Perth East approve entering into a winter maintenance mutual aid arrangement between the Township and the Corporation of the County of Perth, the Municipality of North Perth, the Municipality of West Perth, the Township of Perth South, and the Town of St. Mary's. Moved by Andrew, second by Amanda. Any more questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Anything else, Wes? No?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move to the sign bylaw and we'll turn it over to John.
Good evening. So essentially, the bylaw for the signs was a dated, outdated bylaw. So this process started before my time. The building department bylaw was working with a lawyer on this, but essentially we cleaned it up. There was a lot of changes, a big face over facelift, and so it was hard to pinpoint everything in a report for you guys. But if you had any questions, essentially we tried to remove signs definitions that are no longer used and nowadays, and add ones that are used more commonly, and then we tried to make it a little less vague and easier to read, a little more user friendly. So anyways, if you have any questions regarding that, then now's the time.
Okay, questions? Hugh?
Yeah, what is a daylight triangle?
The daylight triangle?
Yeah.
Is it, did you get it from the definitions?
No, it was, it's on page 246, 5.2.1. Maybe I just missed it, but it,
5.2.
So the definition would be under 2.27 on page 246.
Gosh. And then daylight. Try. That's a good question, Hugh. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. I can get back to you on that one.
I think West has his hand up.
Wes?
Wes can help me out.
Yeah, daylight. Hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So a daylight triangle is an intersection. When you drive up to an intersection, when you look to the right or the left, it's an area that is a triangle to the opposing road. So if you were driving up on a side road and you went to look down a concession road, there's a triangle at that intersection that has to be maintained. There can't be anything put in that triangle. That's what that means.
Okay, thanks.
You,
Thanks, Wes.
you understand?
Okay, any other questions? I have a few. So,
Perfect.
auction signs, where does auction signs fall under?
Auction signs would fall under temporary signs. So there's a lot of temporary signs. So we wouldn't think of everyone, but that's one we would put under the temporary.
Okay. Rotating signs. So the only rotating sign I've ever seen is on a single stake, and it would say oil on one side and spraying on the other, and it twirls in the wind. Is that what you're considering a rotating sign?
This is one that came from the lawyers, what I was told from our bylaw officer, Jan. So the intent was the larger signs typically that you see in cities, these small twirly signs that you see on farms, and was really not the intent of this enforcement.
Okay. What about a sign that a family farm wants to put on their farm? It says that their family name on it. Would they require to get a permit?
So looking at it again, I know we spoke about it. If you look in 4.1 signs exempt from requiring a permit, it does say a farm name sign on sentence E there. So we don't require sign permits for those.
Okay, and then a small business, like say for a breakfast, if they just had a small sign in their house or their lawn.
So through the zoning bylaw, there's a home business or occupation. So if you stayed within the limits, so 25% or less for area. You can't be in your garage. So essentially, if you fit in those requirements of a home business, then the sign could follow through the bylaw of home business. So those particular scenarios would not require a permit. If the home business or if you fell outside of the home business requirements, then those signs would require a permit, if that makes sense.
Yep. Okay. Anyone else think of any questions? Daryl?
Yeah, back to the auction sign there. So that's one that doesn't require a permit. Now, can we make that pretty clear that where it would fit in?
So it just to clarify, it would require a permit. It's under the temporary permits, which I believe we asked for. Yeah. Yeah, it would fall under the temporary Daryl there. So temporary permits, or sorry, signs do require permits.
Now, what is the purpose, like an auction sign, why would it require in as opposed to non-real estate sign? An auction sale is pretty quick, very short notice. I'm just concerned on that one.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. We just decided to put it under the temporary sign part, and real estate signs we see more commonly, I would say. If we started asking permits for real estate, I think it would create a lot of heat, but auction signs I don't think happen too often, and for that reason we threw it in the temporary section.
Yeah, okay, it's respectfully, if I may, I think that's something we can maybe look at again. And okay. I believe we have the jurisdiction to put that in to just simply non-required. Again, lots of times the auctioneer will show up for the auction sale. When an auction sale happens, they don't have to apply to the township. The auction sale is happening. So if we could just allow them to put up their signs, they're usually there for a few hours and off a day, and the signs go down when the auctioneer goes home. I think that's something as much as we question in the spring auction sales around the farming community, there's more than you think in Perth East. So I think maybe it's something we could work with. Maybe Wes has something there.
Wes?
I think the reason that came up is because of an auction sale. They often put signs up at intersections, and that causes visibility problems. So I think that's one of the reasons why the permit was, if I remember correctly from years gone by, that was one of the reasons that happened. It's not like a house that's for sale, it's at the property, but this year's, they put it at intersections to notify traffic when they're coming in.
Amanda?
If I recall correctly, there was an issue with the Amish school auction when they had put up some signage. And I guess my question is, I understand like the safety component, because like as Wes said, like they're often put like at a stop sign, or they're trying to get the most visibility. But if how would we communicate with organizations to make sure that they know about the bylaw? Because I think like people, they think they're trying to help, and a lot of these things are put on sometimes by volunteers. And so how do we make sure that we're communicating like with the bylaw, like that they're not, they don't get in trouble by our bylaw officer, that kind of thing, just because it's, I'm just thinking of like certainly there's auctions that are like ongoing ones, and some that are like, volunteer groups and stuff like that. I guess I just want to know if staff has like put some thought into the communication piece on that.
Teresa's going to answer that.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the volunteers and the large auction sale that we have typically in this area on an annual basis, staff work very closely. Our fire department, our public works department, and the building department bylaw work very closely with the organizers of that event.
Okay, Amanda.
Thank you, Teresa. I guess I should rephrase. Certainly there are annual events that take place. And obviously we have, like you noted, a longstanding partnership with that particular organization that I referenced. However, there are other groups that it might not be such a regular process. So how would we go about, handling that?
Do you want me to get that, Teresa, or you?
I can answer that.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm echoing here. So with the same thing in response to Councillor Broadhagen's question, certainly our municipal staff are only too willing to work with those organizations.
Okay, Jerry.
Just help me out. So our old bylaw said an auction sign is a temporary sign and no permit is required. So we're now taking that auction sign and adding it to, I believe, to still a temporary, but that requires a permit. Is that correct? But we're changing that?
I'll be honest, I don't know exactly the previous bylaw. A lot of the changes were dealt with the lawyer previous to me, but all I can say is the latest bylaw does require an auction sign through the temporary. Yeah.
Jerry.
So on page PE 284 is our old bylaw, and listed under 3.39 letter D is auction. So that's included with election sign, sale of real estate, construction, planning application. Those are all temporary signs that do not require a permit in our old bylaw.
Okay.
So from what I understand is the new bylaw is adding the auction sign to a permit based, because in the past auction signs have been put at intersections. Sounds like that could be the reason why we're adding it, so that we're going to maybe deter auctioneers from having, okay, if I have to, well, if we pass it with them getting a permit, they got to get a permit anyway. But if that's the only reason why we're moving this auction sign to needs a permit, because the bylaw officer is picking up or auction signs that are in intersections. I've been down this road. We went down this road with our current fire department. We put up breakfast signs, and the current department, we didn't know that, it's part of the bylaw is you can't put them in intersections. We know, now we know. But if this is the reason why we're moving, I don't think it should be moved into a permit. Just leave it with the temporary sign that no permit is needed. It's a simple little change if that's what it reads in the fine prints there somewhere.
So it's not to deter auction events and signs. It's more so to just control it and make sure it's done in a safe manner. So it's not that we're going to be denying these auctions. It's just we want to make sure, like Wes was saying, that they're not put in places we don't want them put, and they meet certain size requirements.
Amanda.
So going back to some of the points that were made, my concern is, again, I know that it was stated that we will work with those groups, but if they require a permit and they didn't know that, and we're not communicating that this is a change that we're making, could they not get fined? Is that correct?
Potentially. So typically when new bylaws, new building code regulations, any of that, we take a soft approach. So again, like Teresa said, we're here to work with them. We're not going to be throwing the book hard at them, but especially when there are new changes.
See, that is my concern, is that that there's that hypothetical there, and I really just don't think that our volunteer groups need to have that doubt that that might happen, especially if it's something that they didn't know. So, and I mean, also the fact that, you know, our own fire department, you know, had put up signs promoting an event and placed it and they didn't know, you know, shows that it, you know, it just, you know, they mean no harm. But I think I just have a little bit of concern, like a few others, that moving it might not be a good idea. And I think I would much rather see some communication, like materials put out on our social media feeds or whatnot, kind of, you know, communicating, you know, appropriate sign usage or something like that. I would much rather see something like that done than a change in this direction.
Okay, Daryl.
Yeah, thanks there, Amanda. Yeah. On the tip of my tongue for the last 5 minutes. I would like to see a communication piece, and we keep it unpermitted. Media release, communication to our local auctioneers, and let's take that approach, what we expect. And I believe that'll be very, very successful, and they'll share amongst themselves. And I think that will just take a lot of pressure off. We got to remember, we got a responsibility here too to keep costs down. And we have people working and struggling, putting permits together. It's just more work for the staff too. As much as we need to be safe and we want to be safe, I think we can take an approach Councillor Rodhagen put on the table there, and that's what we should maybe do.
Hey, Jeremy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I, like Jerry, have put up some signs in the past, including our Christmas on Main celebration signs, and received phone calls because of the location of those signs being in unsafe spots. So I do feel pretty strongly that some of those temporary signs, auction signs, whatever they are, we should just educate the people that we know are putting those signs up, make sure they're going in a safe place. And, you know, if they are in a bad spot, we can remove them and call them instead of, I understand that the fines are in place there for a reason, but I don't want to be putting any fines on anybody that's, you know, if I guess if they continue to do it, that becomes an issue. But if they're in a place that are unsafe and the person was not aware of it, I think that's one thing. So I'm pretty much in the same boat here. Election signs, auction signs, community event signs, even, you know, like the fire department dinners or the different dinners that are going on at the churches, you know, just giving these places some direction on how to do it rather than imposing any kind of fines is definitely how we should approach it. If we have to pick those signs up and call them, which is actually exactly what happened to me, to my signs. Another quick question about the enforcement of this bylaw. If someone has a sandwich board on the sidewalk, are we actively managing those, or are we waiting for a complaint to come in? Because my understanding of most of our bylaws like this, we've been managing them on a complaint basis. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, so typically it is a complaint basis. If the bylaw officer is in the area, we are picking up the signs too. So, but typically it's a complaint basis, yes.
So if there's a sign, if there's a sandwich board out there and the bylaw officer drives by and sees it and there's no complaint, it will get picked up?
Potentially, yes.
Okay, Jerry, did you have something?
Yeah, just so all temporary signs do not require a permit. And the list is there on page P245. It's just missing the auction sign. In our old bylaw, it was listed under that temporary signs not requiring. To just clarify things and to help Councillor Hurlick, why don't we just add auction sign to make it clear? You could say it's a sign erected by a public authority. Maybe an auctioneer is not a public authority, but a temporary poster sign. It's a poster. An auction can be considered a poster. But just to make it clarification, why don't we just add auction sign to this? And we should be good to go. Unless the reason that they want this actual auction sign removed is to get a permit. I think it's a simple fix. And again, obviously in bold, that these signs comply with all the other requirements, the temporary signs. You cannot put them in daylighting. You can't have them at an intersection, on boulevards, etc. Stop sign. That sounds like an easy fix to me, unless staff is really concerned with leaving the auction sign in the permit section.
Okay, Daryl?
No, you're right, Gary. I gotta agree for sure. And still, let's do an educational piece, because I'll tell you, as much as we're being pretty nice there with the real estate signs, let's be honest, we've all seen a few real estate signs where they shouldn't be. So I think an educational piece, but yeah, let's move that piece there with the auction signs and do a bit of an educational session. If media release is awesome through Facebook and stuff, I just share it through Messenger and people get it. Man, really hit it there. Yeah, like what Gary said there.
Okay, so do you want to send it back to staff and have them make some revisions? And bring
that, yeah, I think that's the best thing to do. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So we'll, the motion of the council, Township of Perth East, receive the signed bylaw report prepared by the chief building official dated November 17, 2020 for information, and that staff bring back a further report with some revisions, and then we will approve. Oh, Teresa wants to add something.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I just for clarification regarding that, so with the resolution that now the one thing that was identified by council members regarding that auction, regarding the auction sign, to put it in the other section. And if there are any other things, because we didn't, or the bylaw for consideration is not on tonight's council agenda. The part of the recommendation is that it comes back for the next meeting. So are there other, just so for clarification, for coming back?
Yeah, we can do this, and then the changes, staff have noted the changes, so when it comes back, then it would be included. So approval will be December 1st, so staff noted the changes.
So you want me to add the changes in there?
Is John comfortable? Is John comfortable with the changes verbally? Like what we did with the reports? Jeremy has his hand.
John, bring it at the next meeting? You can.
Yeah, Jeremy has his hand up.
We just?
Jeremy.
Sorry.
I did, and then it was down.
I'm trying to get things straight here.
I do have a bit of an issue surrounding the enforcement of the bylaw when it comes to sandwich boards and street signs, stuff like that, because if it just, our bylaw officer isn't out there every day in every community, and just because a bylaw officer is walking the streets of Shakespeare one day and sees us, I don't want our bylaw officer to be picking that sign up and calling that individual saying they have a sign of theirs that was illegally placed, because if they're not in Milverton in that particular time and there's no complaint about it, like the person in Milverton is going to be running by a different set of rules than the person in Shakespeare. Just so happens where our bylaw officer is, and all of our other bylaws, we're kind of enforcing them on a complaint type basis. So I mean, unless it's in a dangerous location, I don't really agree with us picking up any signs and then contacting the business after the fact.
I think my only comment with that is, my understanding, the bylaw officer is working on a complaint basis, but I don't follow the bylaw officer every day. So I'm just saying there could be that rare case where maybe one was picked up in the past, but typically it's complaint basis. But I can always get clarification on that.
Andrew.
Okay, Andrew?
Yeah, no, thanks, John, for revisiting this. I know we've had some unclear stuff in the past. Just a clarification. So bylaw would only react on Perth East highways, like Highway 7 and 8 and county roads would be other jurisdiction, or do they act on their behalf also for signage? For example, downtown Shakespeare, or you have a county road meets Highway 7 and 8. Is that under our jurisdiction, or is that would be? I know our friends from the MTO would be all over it if they could.
Yeah. So my understanding, anything outside of MTO would be us. Anything with MTO would require approval from them.
And that's county also? We would police county too?
Yeah.
County road? Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I did propose there one thing, we could receive it for information and have staff bring it back. Or we could, the other one is receive it for information, staff bring it back with the changes to the next meeting, but we would still approve the bylaw. So do you want to do that? Or do you want to see the changes first and then move the bylaw to the next meeting? Daryl's nodding his head. Hugh?
I'd wait and pass it at the next meeting after we see what changes are made. I think that would be a clearer way to do it.
Okay, so the motion will be that it will come back to our next meeting with some revisions. Okay, all right, so a mover for that, moved by Hugh, second by Amanda. Is there any more questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay, do you have anything else, John?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. Bill, do you have anything you want to add? For fire?
No, thank you.
No, okay. Then we'll move to correspondence. We have 3 items for correspondence. The first one that we have is from John Gerber, and they have a subdivision that they would like us to make a decision. They gave us 3 options, A, B, and C, what to do about trees. So this subdivision has been going on for several years now. Some of the trees in that subdivision are pretty mature. So they're asking for an amendment to the subdividers agreement. Jerry?
I believe we're going to need a staff report. Don't think I can make a decision A, B, or C without seeing a report.
Okay, anyone else? We were hoping that we could do it tonight without a staff report because they gave us 3 options. And I think council, maybe Wes can make some comments about the 3 options and we could perhaps hopefully pick one.
That
You there, Wes?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So going through the options, I don't think, I think any one of them would work. The only thing that we have to bear in mind is if we pick the option that we plant trees somewhere in the Melverton or the Mornington wards, and somebody on that street would like a tree, we need to be prepared to probably plant a tree, which is fine every year that we plant trees every year. So we do get funds for that. I don't think any of the options, I think they're all decent options. We could easily work with any one of them.
Thank you.
Myself personally, planting the trees and where you plant them always seems to be somewhat problematic. I think if the money went to the park reserve, that way, then if there was something came up someplace, the trees then could be planted. And that way, this would be done and finished, as it's dragged on for so many years.
Jeremy?
If you're a homeowner living in that area that you might have forgotten that you were supposed to get a tree in your front yard by now, I think we need to give an option to every one of those homeowners, since this has gone on for 30 years. We need to give an option to them whether or not they want that tree in their front yard, and if they don't, then we get a cash settlement outside of that. Or in the meantime, since it took so long, a lot of those homeowners have already planted their own trees on the front yards. I know my parents live in that subdivision and they planted 2 of their own trees. They probably didn't even know this existed. So we either need to give them the option to plant a tree on their front yard, or they need to, and if they say no, then we take a cash settlement and we plant our own trees.
Okay, anyone else? Andrew?
I'm looking at the tree proposal, where are we at, B302. That's an accurate today's cost, or is that the 20-year ago cost?
I believe that's today's cost. They talked to Mr. Drummond.
Okay.
From Greenbelt Farms.
Oh, okay. So that's a looking for.
It does say Mornington Ward tree proposal on there though. So.
Okay. It seems a little, that's a good price. Yeah, I'd like to see them planted what the original agreement was. Like, was it be on the boulevard or on the land, on the people's front lawns? Do we like putting trees on boulevards? There's probably problems with that, with snow clearing and that, right? That's probably not a great thing, and clogging the drains. Yeah, maybe Councillor McDermott or Deputy Mayor McDermott's suggestion of parkland and lieu money is maybe one of the better ideas.
Eric?
Well, if staff's okay and if it's with the agreement, to be the option C would be the option then, and that way Mr. Gerber could put the money to the township and we could put it to parkland. We could do with it as we wish.
Are you moving that?
I'd move option C.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Amanda? Okay, any more questions or comments? Jeremy?
Yeah, I think there might be some homeowners in that subdivision that want trees to be planted now that they might be more aware of the situation. And I also think we need to make sure that that quote is valid before we proceed. Took a long time to even get a sidewalk on that street. So I would really like to close the door on this one too, but I think we need to make sure that quote is 100% accurate and give the option to the homeowners on that street what they want on their properties, because that was part of the original agreement.
I have a question for Wes. And have we taken this subdivision over, or it's still theirs? Is that correct? It's still Mr. Gerber's, Wes?
No, we have taken the subdivision over.
So we have taken it over.
Yes.
Okay.
And just that, the quote there is accurate. That quote is only less than a month old.
Okay.
I just don't see a name on that quote at all. To me, it's just a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper. We don't have a company name on that at all. We have no idea who that's from.
Okay, any more comments? Daryl?
This is just across the board. It talks in there too when we're planting these trees and the different types of soil and the trees proper. I've thought that up before. I'm glad that it talks about that. It's just a little something to put in your back pocket there when we're working in these subdivisions. We always got to make sure we're getting the right trees in there, because on a dry year, a bunch of them start shutting down because they just can't handle the clay because there's no subsoil, but there is some trees do better. So it's interesting that you brought that up. I've brought that up myself before. I've seen so much of it. And it makes me nervous if you don't get the right tree. Thank you.
Okay, Wes?
So it's in the Mr. Gerber's letter there. It says that the attached quote is by Greenbelt Farms. So
okay, anyone else? So we do have a motion on the floor, which is option C, to provide a cash settlement in lieu of the planting of 38 trees to the Township of Perth East based on the quote provided, whereas such funds may be used for any purposes the council and staff deem prudent. We have a mover and a seconder. Is there any more questions or comments? Carol?
Could we adjust that a little? Maybe we should be looking where Jeremy's talking and offering them first, and then we put the extra in lieu. And we make sure we talk to these folks in this area first with this money.
So you wish to make an amendment to the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to make an amendment that says that we contact the homeowners to see if they would like a tree in their front yard. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I think the developer needs to contact the homeowner.
Well, Wes told me that we own it, so I'm not sure. Wes, can you help me out here? Would that be us or the developer?
subdivision is owned by the municipality now.
So I would say it would be the municipality that would have to contact the owners then. Is that correct? Because we own it.
Should we have assumed it before these things were completed, or is that normal procedure?
Absolutely not. This was done prior to, I think this was done prior to amalgamation. So it was assumed a long time ago. I think with option C, I think we have, if somebody contacts the office and says that, yeah, they found out that they get a tree, I think option C allows us to say, yeah, for sure. Here's one of the trees picked from this group of trees, and one of them will get planted. I think that's, to me, that I don't think we need to have any more in there than that, but that would just be my opinion.
But they probably aren't even aware that this exists 25 years later. So we need to let them know that they could have a tree.
Well, we do have an amendment on the floor, and Darrow moved it. So, procedurally wise, I should have a seconder if you want to move forward with that. So Jeremy is going to second it. Okay. Is there any more questions or comments? So Ashley's writing furiously here. The amendment was to contact the owners to see if they would like a tree in their yard, and that's what we're going to vote on first before the original motion. Okay, so we're going to vote on the amendment that we should contact the owners to see if they wish a tree. All in favor of that? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so now we're going to vote on the original motion with the amendment, and the original motion is that option C, to provide a cash settlement in lieu of the planting of 38 trees to the Township of Perth East based on the quote provided, whereas such funds may be used for any purpose the council and staff deem prudent, and that the owners of the properties be contacted to see if they would like a tree planted on their property. Andrew?
I'm already on. My discussion point on that would be that obviously the funds for planting the tree for the staff time would also come out of that cash settlement value, please. Do we need to put that in the motion? We don't want to tack that on as it's all part and parcel. So if that's understood, that's fine. but I don't think it should come out of the general levy or the budget of Public Works for the planting. So however you do that, that money should come out of the cash settlement for planting. And it won't be a lot because they're not big trees, but if we have 30 or 40 trees to plant, then I think it may be a lot of time, right? Thank you.
Okay, Jeremy?
That money to plant the trees is already in that quote, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, to spend however we deem prudent seems pretty vague and pretty widespread. Like Hugh said, this money should be kept in the Parkland Reserve then, so we can spend it on stuff that is more associated with development, not, you know, not building a road somewhere. That's all. It's a pretty, option C is that we can spend it however we'd like, and to me that's not what that intended use of that money is. It's not a lot of money we're talking about here, but it's it needs to be spent back on what it should have been spent on initially.
Okay, going back to your point, Andrew, are you happy with that, or you want to amend the amendment? You're muted.
I'm good to go. I'm just kind of planting a seed, as it were.
Okay, so is there any more questions or comments? So we're voting on the original motion with the amendment. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, testing my skills tonight. Next item under correspondence is the Stop Violence Against Women Coordinating Committee. Is there anything anyone wishes to do with this correspondence? Receive it for information? Is that what you wish to do? Andrew? You okay, moved by Andrew, second by Daryl. Any more questions or comments? We receive it for information. All in favor? Carried. Okay, and the third item of correspondence is from Mark Hackett, the Manager of Environmental Services with the Municipality of North Perth. Is there any questions on this? No questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Jeremy.
I just had a question for Wes, what the ramifications are as a whole to us.
So we need to look at options. Right now I'm getting a proposal to see what it would be to do a contract for water and wastewater, because as you know, we don't have a wastewater operator as well. I'll be bringing a report back to council for discussion.
Okay, anyone else? So a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the correspondence from Mark Hackett, Manager of Environmental Services with the Municipality of North Perth dated November 12, 2020 regarding the Water Services Agreement and Locate Services Agreement for information, and that staff bring back a report with more information. Moved by Daryl. Second, Hugh. Is there any more questions on that? All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're going to move on to council and committee reports. There is no meeting log. Does anyone have a report to bring forward? Jerry?
Just a couple that I sit on, the Perth County Municipal Association. So that event is tomorrow. Hopefully everyone is registered that's able to attend tomorrow morning. I wasn't able to attend the Twitting committee meeting that was held last night, but that's a lot of good feedback from that. That's all that I can think of. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Anyone else have any committee reports? Jeremy?
Business Association, we've got the Christmas on Main going on here. So keep an eye on the shop opportunities again and get out there and get the scavenger hunt done.
Okay. Anyone else? No. Okay, so then we need a motion to accept these reports. Moved by Andrew, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. Okay, then we'll go to bylaws. We have bylaws to be read a first, second, third, and final time. So we have 68-2020, which is an 8-year lease agreement with the Township and Newton Athletic Association. 69-2020, which is an 8-year lease agreement with the Township and Milverton Minor Ball. 70-2020, which is an 8-year lease agreement with the Township and Millbank Recreation Association. Bylaw 71-2020, authorized signing of a public works mutual aid agreement. Bylaw 73-2020, authorized entering into an agreement with the Corporation of the County of the Perth PC Connect Community Transit Bus Stop Agreement. And 74-2020 is the same thing, the bus stop agreement. Bylaw 109-2020, to levy assessments for the maintenance and repair of branch number 1 of the Boyle Municipal Drain. Bylaw 112-2020, levy the assessments for the maintenance and repair of the Thames River Municipal Drain. Bylaw 115-2020, a bylaw to amend the assessment for the Ackersville Municipal Drain. And bylaw 116-2020, being a bylaw to consolidate municipal drain maintenance completed in 2019 to 2020. A motion for these bylaws, moved by Hugh, second by Andrew. All in favor? Carried. So we do have a closed session. So with your permission, we'll move it down so that we can deal with some other business first. Do we have any notice of motions? We have one item under new business, and Teresa will tell you about that. Oh, yours.
Okay, thank you. So just for council's information, we continue to meet with our emergency control group on a regular basis, both locally and our joint. Certainly there are concerns out there with the number of cases rising in Ontario and maybe within the close proximity. In terms of at this time, I know that council had indicated perhaps being anxious to get back into in-person meetings. With the numbers rising right now, we've discussed at our meetings as well, in terms of it probably is not our recommendation to in-person meet at this time, just based on numbers increasing. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Okay, is there any questions for Teresa on that? Jerry?
Well, just to clarify, the office is open.
Right.
So public, we can serve as best we can. So just to clarify, we are open.
Yes, we are open. And we're just going to kind of monitor it day by day to see what happens. So hopefully it can stay open. I think Teresa said there's only like 2 or 3 people that come into the office. So the public still has all the access they had before, phones, internet, drop stuff off. So we'll keep monitoring it and see what happens. So anyone else with questions? Nope. Okay. So anyone else with new business? Announcements? Okay. We do have a need for a closed session, and we need Rhonda, and Wendy's going to join us for that as well. So everyone else, thank you and have a great night, and we'll see you all again, and stay safe. Good night. Oh, and the other ones, council members, please log into the closed session Zoom.
So you need to log in. That's why. You can go.
Okay, so we need confirmatory bylaw, correct? So that bylaw 75/2020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the Township of Perth East at its regular meeting held on November 17, 2020, be read a first, second, and third time. Moved by Jeremy, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. And motion to adjourn at 10:13. Moved by Andrew, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Be
Is
safe.
everyone coming tomorrow to the municipal meeting?
Jerry and you and Amanda and myself and Teresa and Ashley.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wes,
see.
Ally, James will be there in place of Bill Hunter, Rhonda Fisher, Becky. So most of the management team.
Full house then.
Yep.
I don't